Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am truly zonked and I'm floating. They hating, gatekeeping. They dislike my flying freely. Dislike my flying freely. Dislike my flying freely. Dislike my. Okay, I'm stopping. All right. That's a little shout out to whoever's left a couple of dislikes on my videos. It's like, really? What? Whatever. I'm not done. It's either that they don't like that everything's floating in my builds, or that I'm using a mod to fly, because honestly I'm just kind of over the flight mechanics of the game. We'll see in update 8. Maybe I'll go back to it. Anyways, it's either one of those things, or I got somebody who just thinks I'm cringe, and if that's the case, maybe be less judgy. Just a thought. You do you, though. Whatever. Okay, anyways, also super really fast, thank you. I hadn't realized how many new folks subscribed to the channel since I started this series, and I was really not expecting it. I mean, not blowing up, but, it is what it is, and I'm just like, well, awesome, thank you guys, I really appreciate that. And for everybody else who had encouraging and kind words, thank you also very much. It really does mean a lot. Glad to know there's just plain, genuine, good human beings out there. In any case, so, yes, welcome back to my playthrough of Satisfactory. And this is actually my second recording of this video. I did a whole other recording yesterday and forgot to turn on my microphone. Gee, I wonder why I could have possibly done that. I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. Yeah, right, nonsense. In any case, so if you watched the previous episodes, you're super troopers. They're long, I know, I'm sorry, and this one's probably going to be a little lengthy too. But the nice thing about a second shot at it is that I get to whittle some things down. So, in any case, in the previous episode, what I covered was my Plasblast factory, which was taking in 2,400 crude oil and outputting 3,520 each of plastic and rubber. And that is with the intent to distribute among smaller factories. Well, not smaller, but additional factories scattered around the map later on. We went over some fluidics, shall we say, and I'm not going to get all into that. Probably will have to check in on this, but I do want to go on to some aluminum factory blueprinting, and we're going to get to that momentarily. Do have some things little steps and processes, but before we get into that, first we want to check in on my trickle factory. Okay, not that I expected there to be a problem at this moment, but I just wanted to check and confirm, yes, my batteries for the drone ports are packed. I previously discussed an issue I had encountered where, when working at my blueprint array over in that direction, that's probably about 2.5 kilometers or so, the drone ports here would seemingly accelerate their battery usage for the drones to the point where the lines were emptying, the buffer was filling, and that my micro battery factory there just couldn't provide the output. I don't believe the issue is in the factory itself. The efficiency of the battery manufacturer is still at 100%. I do believe it is an issue with the drones taking more batteries. The oddity about that, though, is when I had changed locations and I started working at the Plasblast factory, you can see just barely in that direction over there, which is actually a bit further away still, I did not encounter the problem. So I'm unclear at this moment whether an actual change was made in the game. I'm still on the same CL number, change list number, or if this is dependent on the location where I'm actually spending time away from. So where I had initially experienced it was the blueprint array, so we're going to be spending time back there at the blueprint array, and we'll check back in toward the episode end and see where we're at. So let's get over there really quickly. Alright, and here we are. This is my 2x3 array of the 96 by 96 meter blueprint designers added into the game from the Blueprint Designer Plus mod. We already went over this. And so we're going to do a little bit of aluminum factory blueprinting. I don't believe we're going to be able to design the whole thing this episode, but we're going to get a good start. So now, little recap. I went over briefly about how I decided a base level of how much I wanted to build, and I showed in a spreadsheet that I had made where if I was going strictly for, okay, so I want the planet of, employee of the planet achievement, right? And to do that, you need, and I'm forgetting which things or which, but either 1,000 or 4,000 of the nuclear pasta, the EM shield or the electromagnetic field generators, the thermal propulsion rockets, and the other device. It's not important right now. So, anyways, what I had done is I showed the rough math. If I produced 1 per minute of the ones that need 1,000 and 4 per minute of the ones that take 4,000, I could complete that in 16 hours. And that is totally fine by me. The thing is when I started looking at the numbers of the machines required to make that, they're kind of like, I mean, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but a little on the low side. I kind of wanted to build larger factories. So what I basically started approaching that is like, okay, I've got that spreadsheet. That's a guideline, minimum numbers that I need to get produced. So now, and also showed how I broke it out into different subsections. There's aluminum, there's plastics, there's circuitry, there's structural, and further. And so I'm going to split this out into factories, spread them across the world. I want to have some trains delivering some items to some semi-central locations, and then trucks picking up materials from those train stations and delivering them to more specific locations. That will all be well down the road. The thing about it is, though, I kind of need to know where all of those locations are going to be before I want to start setting out building, roads and rails. Yeah. Anyways, so we'll get to that. All right. So aluminum is next. I want to get my aluminum factory started. So, Robin, to the spreadsheets. All right. So, what I have here, I've outlined my spreadsheet techniques before, and something. I'm just gonna say, if there's anybody who's like, this is a little too much spreadsheety for me, this is a Let's Play series. I'm not claiming to be the best or the most efficient. This is just me, just how I go about it, and the spreadsheets are absolutely part of my playstyle. So, and I really don't see any other YouTubers, not that I've seen them all, that are spending that much time showing you even how to consider. You don't have to do it my way, but if you get ideas, that's all. Just get ideas. In any case, so here on my spreadsheet, what I have done, this is one that I have done for some resource use comparison for aluminum. And what I do, like in this case, all right, so I'm starting off with the alumina solution here, right? And let me zoom this a little bit just so for displays a little better. I do see some of you folks watch on phones. Self-flagellate much? No, teasing. Any case, so I start off with a demand. I wanted to create, for the sake, and these are not necessarily, production numbers. These are just for the sake of consistency for comparisons purposes. 600 aluminum solution per minute, right? It's the base level item to create in the chain of events for aluminum. So you start here, and what the spreadsheet is showing me, it's like, okay, to produce 600 alumina solution, it uses 600 bauxite. This is the original default recipe, right? That uses 120 bauxite ore, 180 water, produces 120 aluminum solution per minute, and a byproduct of 50 silica. That's fine, right? However, we go over to the alternate recipe of the sloppy alumina, and producing the same amount, the same demand of 600 alumina solution per minute, this one only uses 500 bauxite. not news to most of you, I'm sure, that this is a more efficient recipe. Actually uses the same ingredients, bauxite ore and water, produces 240 alumina solution per minute, and no byproduct. So what we have, though, here at the top, go back over here. So this is my ratio, the efficiency, that the original recipe uses 1 bauxite ore per 1 cubic meter alumina solution, right? And then the sloppy alumina recipe uses 0.83 bauxite ore per solution. So we have an obvious efficiency increase there, right? Okay. Now, using the sloppy alumina as the base for the next step, I compared scrap. So going by the original scrap recipe, which 240 alumina solution, 120 coal, and produces 360 aluminum scrap and 120 water byproduct. And this also includes of course, here the chain of events for the sloppy alumina and nothing else on this one. And so in order to demand 780 scrap, a full Mark V belt, I've mentioned before, that's how I basically determine the core elements of how I design my factories. I build everything around the fastest bottlenecks, whether it's I have a supply of a certain amount or I have a demand of a certain amount. I work around the highest speed bottlenecks. So for a demand of 780 alumina scrap, at the end of the day, this consumes 433.3 bauxite ore, and it's a ratio of 0.55 ore per scrap, or 55.6, we'll say, efficiency. We also have up here, this uses 6 refineries and a total of 117 megawatts. So, scrolling over here, we have the first alternate recipe of the electrode aluminum scrap. And we have the necessary chain because now this one uses 180 alumina solution, but also 60 petroleum coke per minute, and produces 300 aluminum scrap and byproduct of 105 water. And so, of course, here in our chain, we have our sloppy alumina, but also petroleum coke in order to produce what's required, and the subsequent necessary heavy oil residue required to produce the petroleum coke. All right, so, and that's the end of that chain. Jumping back to the top here, so we have a total consumption for 780 scrap produced. We have consumption of 390 bauxite ore and 39 cubic meters of crude oil. We have a ratio of 0.5, very nice actually, bauxite ore per scrap, and 0.05 oil per scrap. And compared to this, so that's about a 5.6% increase in efficiency going from the original to the electrode scrap recipe on bauxite. It's minor, and it may or may not be what you want to do. And I'll get into how I make my ultimate decisions here. You'll see. It'll make sense. We have a total of 9 refineries now in play and 200 megawatts used. Now, scrolling to the second alternate recipe of instant scrap. So now this one forgoes the alumina solution completely. It takes 150 bauxite, 100 coal per minute, 50 sulfuric acid, and 60 water to produce 300 aluminum scrap and a byproduct of 50 water. And here in the event chain, the recipe chain, there's only one additional, and that's the sulfuric acid, using 50 sulfuric acid or sulfur and 50 water per minute to create the 50 sulfuric acid per minute. This is the required amount, 130, etc., etc. Any case, so in order to produce the same 780 scrap, this one uses 130 bauxite ore, 260 coal, 130 sulfur, and 286 water. So the ratio here is 0.1666 and change bauxite per ore, which seems like, wow, friggin' amazing, right? Yeah, you'd be surprised. You'll wait to see how this goes. And then we've got the coal and the sulfur. Our total sulfur, again, used on this one is 130. The ratio is 0.166, same as the bauxite. Seems like that's affordable enough. Again, it's all up to you, personal play style. This starts to add up, though. So our machines, we had 3 refineries in play, 3 blenders in play, and a total usage here of 363 megawatts. So comparing that to the beginning, the first efficiency was 0.55 per scrap. The second was 0.5 per scrap. And the third is 0.16 per scrap, which seems amazing, but watch what happens. So the next tab is aluminum ingots. Again, let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, things are getting a little adding up here. So this is full aluminum ingot chains. So again, going by a core demand of 780. I want to pack a line of 780, right? So this here uses, this first one is the default recipe, 90 aluminum scrap, 75 silica to produce 60 ingots per minute. And the necessary chains of, I'm using the alumina solution as a constant, just to keep things consistent across the comparisons. I'm sorry, what am I saying here? The original alumina scrap recipe, pardon, is what I'm trying to say, just to keep it consistent across the comparisons for the moment. And then I use the sloppy alumina, because we basically already determined that's the better of the alumina solution recipes, right? And then we also had to add in a recipe block here for silica, and I'm using the cheap silica recipe. Definitely more efficient for silica production. We can look at that some other time. In any case, so back to the top here. In order to produce 780 ingots per minute, we have a total consumption of 650 ore, bauxite ore, 390 coal, 417 quartz, 696 limestone. The water is not a concern really right now. But anyways, the end efficiency ratio for the bauxite is 0.83333. And that's fine, we have coal, 0.5 per ingot. So when you start adding in complete chains and you compare like how many resources you dumped in to the actual end component you're trying to make, your ratios start to kind of shift around a little bit. You really kind of need to take in the whole scope. Oops, my microphone stand's falling over. All right. Okay, I had to adjust that a little bit there. So now this goes up to, we have 21 refineries in action, 38 assemblers, and a total of, there goes a stand again, stop that. A total megawatt usage of 1,051 megawatts. All right, so that's using the original ingot recipe. Scrolling over here, this one is using the pure aluminum recipe. And look what happens. So in order to produce the same amount, 780 per minute, this one winds up using 866 bauxite per minute. Where was it? So we got our sloppy alumina here. We have our aluminum scrap original here. And yeah, so in contrast to the other pure metal recipes like, say, copper or caterium, with this one, your efficiency actually goes down. You need less additional ingredients, which may or may not be what you want at a given moment. But without those additional ingredients, it just takes up more scrap. And with more scrap, so on and so forth. Anyways, so our bauxite efficiency now is up to 1.111 ore per minute. And the coal is 0.66. That's not the important part. And we have now 10 refineries and 26 smelters and 352. Now, taking into account, all right, so we examined the individual recipes and see what kind of efficiencies this give us. So now I built up different individual recipe chains, trying out different combinations. So this one here for start, and what I'm going with here is I'm using a supply. Okay, I want to take one full belt And again, this is all just hypothetical, just for illustration, just for determining efficiencies. This is not a production number, right? So I said, okay, I want to take a 780 belt of bauxite ore. How many ingots can I make out of that? Well, if I'm using the sloppy alumina solution recipe, the original aluminum scrap, and the original aluminum ingots, I get 936. So the ultimate efficiency here using this chain is 0.833 bauxite per ingot. Okay, and because 780, this one uses 16 foundries, 8 refineries, and 45 assemblers. That's making the silica, again using the cheap silica recipe, and for a total of 1276 megawatts. Our next recipe chain here, this one is using the electrode scrap, and so again using the same input of 780 ore. Same sloppy alumina solution here, the electrode scrap recipe, and then the original aluminum ingots recipe. We're using the original for this, again, just for consistency across comparisons, and also because I don't like the efficiency of the pure aluminum scrap. I will make silica. I am fine with that. We're going to have fun there. So anyways, the end ERP efficiency. So in order to take full advantage of 780 bauxite ore, we wind up using with a usage, sorry, pardon me, of 0.75 bauxite per aluminum, which actually is not bad, right? And of course the additional crude oil and quartz and all that. This starts blossoming now. We're up to 18 foundries, pardon me, 36 refineries, 50 assemblers, and a total megawatt of 2189 megawatt usage, right? And now we have one last recipe chain. This one follows instant scrap. So let me go back here really quickly. If we look at the scrap recipe, all right, so same input, 780 bauxite ore. In the long run, this one produces 1,040 ingots per minute. All right. Consumes 520 coal, 557 quartz, 928 limestone, and 260 sulfur. Again, doesn't seem that bad if that's all you're trying to produce. So, and our efficiency, now here's where it becomes interesting, and like I was saying, you kind of need to start looking at the efficiencies of your total recipe chains. This has got the same bauxite to ingot efficiency as the electrode scrap, 0.75. It's right there. So even though it saves us a step of needing to create the alumina solution, it's not scoring us anything efficiency-wise. And then beyond that, what it does do is it adds sulfur, to the mix. Speaking only for myself, sulfur's not one of the more plentiful resources in the game, and I can think of other uses I'd rather be spending sulfur on, primarily batteries and firearms. We'll get to that. So, and turbo fuel. So this one uses 6 blenders, 18 foundries, 6 refineries, 50 assemblers, and a total megawatt usage of 1631. So yeah, the megawatts go down a bit, but we're adding sulfur cost into it. So now here I've taken all three and put them side by side, and so we can compare. Now here's what I roughly want to do. Let's zoom into this again so it's a little easier to read. So going again on the idea that I want to overproduce. I want to create way more than my ultimate goals require. So what I want to do is I want to take 4 pure bauxite nodes worth of 780 belts. So 4 times 780 comes to a total supply of 3,120 bauxite ore, right? Now, following the first chain, which uses sloppy alumina, original scrap, original ingots. And the necessitated silica, going back to the top, uses the total 3120 ore, 1872 coal, 2005 raw quartz in the year 2005. Let me know if you know where that's from. 3342 limestone. So we have an overall efficiency of our 0.833 bauxite per ingot and the rest. This necessitates 63 foundries, 32 refineries, 179 assemblers, and some water extractors. Total megawatt usage of 6,200 megawatt, right? Okay, then we have this recipe chain. This is sloppy alumina to electrode scrap to aluminum ingots with heavy oil residue and petroleum coke production built in, right? And so the 3120 becomes 4,160 ingots. So that consumes 1,560 crude oil, 2228 quartz, 3714 limestone. So the efficiency is 0.75 bauxite to ingot, 0.375 crude oil, and these really don't change because the efficiencies of the silica used, those are static. Regardless of how many ingots you're producing, the efficiency remains the same. We're up to now with this one 70 foundries, 141 refineries, 199, assemblers, and a total megawatt usage of 87.99. And I know I got a lot of juice to spare, but that's a good chunk there, you know. And then the last chain here is built around aluminum scrap. Again, same source or supply, 3120. This produces a total of 4160 aluminum ingots per minute. Uses 2080 coal, 2228 quartz, 3714. Why do those sound familiar? You'll see. And 1040 sulfur. There's the expense I was talking about there. So our efficiency, bauxite to ingot, is 0.75, same as the aluminum scrap recipe. Our efficiency of sulfur is 0.25, seems novel. I mean, modest enough for per ingot for sulfur, but that's 1,040 sulfur. That's one pure node plus of sulfur nodes to get belted in or transported in some manner. That's a little steep for me, price-wise. This one has 21 assemblers, 70 foundries, 21 refineries, and 199 assemblers, and a total consumption of 631 megawatts. Definite savings compared to that one, but it's the sulfur that I don't like. So, okay, I don't like the sulfur, but I like the efficiency, 0.75. So the recipe chain using that gives you 0.75 is the one using electrode scrap, except that's a bunch of oil now to pipe in. That's over 2 full Mark II pipes to try and bring in. There's plentiful oil, but I'm trying to minimize how much I want to belt in or pipe in either way. So, you know something? In the end of the day, the efficiency here going from 0.75 to 0.83 is relatively minor. I'm not sweating it. The difference between a total production of 3744 versus 4160 is, for myself, negligible. 400 and change ingots per minute adds up. It absolutely does. But you know something? 3744 is still going to be plenty. So for our aluminum efficiency or aluminum build, we're going to use the sloppy alumina recipe against the original aluminum scrap requiring coal and the original aluminum ingots requiring silica and the subsection of silica. So that now broken out. All right, so I basically divided this recipe chain out to a standalone spreadsheet um, to basically act. This is our blueprint, as it were. Not really so much a blueprint. Again, guidelines. I tend to adjust things manually as I go, as I'm building things. But this is going to be our core reference for designing the initial stages of the aluminum factory. And so we're going to go down to the bottom. And the most basic part that we need before we do anything, this is going to be the most laborious and the most obnoxious part about this is the silica production. So we're going to need a total of 2005 raw quartz, 3342 limestone, and this is going to use 179 assemblers. This is going to be my single largest pod I've built so far. When I'm referring to a pod, I'm talking to one subsection producing, it takes one set of ingredients and produces one particular output. So this is a very, very big pod. Largest single pod I've built yet. But 179 is not a super load balance friendly number. So we're actually going to bump this up. I'm going to make this 180. And let's see. And I'm just going to make a note so I know that I've done this. That I manually adjusted it by +1. All right. And the reason why I want 180 versus 179 is because I like numbers of machines that are easily divisible by 2s, 4s, and 8s. It makes load balancing so much easier. It really does. All right. So, now, so we're going to build 180 machines, right? Or build blueprints for 180 machines. It's important to know, getting into this, how we're going to build this stuff. How are we going to distribute this across these machines? And I've got a plan here. So I'm going to start, just say 8, right? Where ultimately we're going to divide this into 8 sections. And if we take the 180 and we divide that by the 8, that comes out to 22.5. Is that the one I was expecting? It's not important right now. I might adjust this. Hold that thought. All right. So, now, in terms of belts, how much are we belting in? All right. So we need 2005 raw quartz, right? So if we just stick a little value there for 780 as our maximum belt, and we take this cell, and this is going to be equals the 2005 divided by 780, that requires 2.57 belts or nodes if you take them in pure of raw quartz. And now this one is going to be the 3342 divided by 780, so 4.28 belts of the limestone. And that's fine for bringing the material into the factory, but it's less fine for splitting out across numbers of machines. So here's what we're going to do. I have a rough idea. We're going to do one set of blueprints that we're going to build twice for the silica. And so doing that, we're going to stick a 2 here. And because, just for illustration, we're going to take 180 machines, we're going to divide that by the 2. So each set of blueprints is going to be 90 machines. All right. Now, we know, if I take the numbers from the raw quartz and limestone for the base recipe to start with, right? So I'm going to go equals for this cell. I'm just going to mirror these values over, 11.28 or 0.25 raw quartz and 18.75 limestone. Now the important part is here, I'm just going to mirror the clock speed that gets applied per machine, right? So I'm going to take the base recipe amount and we're going to multiply that by the clock speed. Let me do that now for each. So each machine will be using 11.142857, etc. Raw quartz and 18.57 and change limestone per machine. So now, Here's where it starts to get squirrely. All right. All right. These numbers start to get, like, make a mess, but it won't be so bad. All right. So we're going to do this in 2 subsections, right? So that means we're going to have 4 groupings of 4 belts. All right. How did I figure this out? I'm trying to remember how the hell I did this before. Hold on a second. Oh, farts. How did I do this? Shit.
3 hours later.
Right. Okay. Sorry. I had to put this together in my head there for a moment. I was forgetting what I was doing. All right, so we're going to take 8 belts to distribute these amongst the limestone amongst the machines, and 4 belts of the quartz, right? We're going to do this. For the quartz, we're going to take the 2005, we're going to divide that between 4 belts. That's 501 per belt. We'll be doing some load balancers for that, right? We're going to take the 3342 limestone and divide that across 8 belts. I'm doing 8 on this one because we're using a higher amount, and that comes out to 417 and change per belt. Now, we're going to build a set of blueprints that we're going to build twice to create the total 180 machines. So one set will create the 90, right? So basically, how am I doing this again, right? If I take this amount per belt of the raw quartz and I divide that by the adjusted number of raw quartz per machine from the base recipe times the clock speed, that supports 45 machines. And then if I do the same thing here, I'm going to take the 417 limestone per belt, I'm going to divide that by the adjusted 18.57 limestone per machine. That comes out to 22.5. I wasn't expecting that. I think we're going to need to bump up the number of machines to make this split more cleanly. Yeah. I thought I could get away with it with 180. I don't believe that's going to be the case. I do have a second number in mind, and this should ripple out. So I'm going to go from 180 to possibly a more absurd number, 192. That I like better. All right. So the math changes, the clock speed changed, my echo for the clock speed changed over here. All my math still stands, just the eventual number. So the use has gone down per machine to 10.44 quartz and 17.4 limestone. And now that's much better. I like that. So that's going to be 48 machines per belt supported by the quartz belts, and 24 machines per belt for the limestone. Okay, this makes more sense. Now we've got a plan, all right? And I'm going to save that. All right, let's get back over to the game now. All right, so now also just wanted to mention really quickly, I do have a place on the map selected for where I want to build this eventually. It's not important right now. It is based on relative proximity of all the required ingredients, the bauxite, the raw quartz, the limestone, and the coal. They're all reasonably nearby. It won't be bad, but for time's sake, we're just going to get straight into the blueprinting here. Alrighty, so. Alright. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, whoops. Yes, okay, thank you. I build in my logistics floors into the design, and all my blueprints are basically designed to be placed on top of existing foundations. So there won't be any foundations built into, or at least at the floor level, the ground level of the blueprint design itself. And we use a couple of walls to elevate everything so that we have 8 meters of space underneath the main floor. All right, let's first set up Oops, I got to select the right toolbar, and let me set up some border parts here first. Okay, because I just like a little. This is for an outer border. That'll be the outer edge of the factory, and we'll do an inner border of some glass floors. These will surround the platforms and allow us to see belts and pipes and things happening underneath more easily. Okay, now I need to start getting my platforms in. I use platforms, if you didn't watch, to elevate all my machinery so it keeps everything on the floor nice and clean and walkable and navigable. Because these are using assemblers, they only require 2 wide instead of 3 wide like we did for the refineries. So let's get these in place. Now I'm going to, because there's going to be a good number of belts going between all these. I'm going to widen the central alley. The demo I did of the heavy oil refineries, I only left 1 wide. We're going to do 3 wide here to make sure we've got lots of room to accommodate for belts. But I'm going to, actually, let's take this guy out. We'll put a center stripe down the middle of the coated concrete. And so we have an alley now, 3 wide. All right. Now continuing, another 2 wide of the frames. Inner border of glass. We're going to take these out. They are excess. Ink drop that guy. Send him down the end. And now let's get some plain concrete 1 meters to fill out our frames. I don't know why it's so finicky about getting it to place it inside the frame immediately in front of you. I kind of figured out how to get it to do it. It's still just like... Okay. So we have the start of a factory floor here with included space for belts and pipes. And now, the question is, all right, how many of our assemblers can we put onto this? So I'm going to take my assembler. I'm going to bring it down here. Now you'll see, I don't know if you noticed, when I did the refineries in the previous episode, it centered very nicely between 3 of these. This assembler only needs 2, but it doesn't center as neatly here. So what I usually tend to do is, for the things that don't center nicely, I bias forwards. I like to leave extra space on the back end, the input end, for additional belts maneuvering, because there's just more going on that end of a machine. So anyways, and now again I'm using the smart mod. How far does this go down? This allows 8 refineries per row as this structure sits to start with, right? Okay. Now what I am also going to do is we're going to build up. Let me get some walls. Just using these as a guide, I'm going to go 3 walls high over each platform. Oops. So that gives us 12 meters. Let me ink drop concrete platform 1 meter. I'm going to attach it here. 2 wide, and then all the way down the end. Do the same here. And take out our walls. So, just a quick thought about, the floating of things, my floating of things. Again, I do have plans to build in supports and structures and things, to make everything not floaty later on, much later on. Otherwise, though, I do like the open air feel. I like to be able to see things at a glance. I like to be able to navigate easily, and the less walls, beams, girders, etc., and everything, stuck in place just for the sake of supporting things, the better for me. I just prefer it that way. We'll do something more aesthetically pleasing later on, but for now, I just like to be able to fly freely between my machines. That was 8, right? Nope, that's right. Short parts. Yeah, I ran out of a handful of different parts when I was doing this build in the previous recording. I needed rotors. Let me get some rotors. I needed steel beams. And I wound up needing AI limiters. Alright, let's get back to the build. And finish these last two here. Okay. So now we have a basic block with 32 refineries. And this will make sense. Now, I'm going to save this for the moment here. And let's see. So what is our... It's Alumtown. Yeah. Yeah, aluminum, alum. And going to be a sizable place, so it's going to be a town of sorts. Well, we're working here in Alumtown. All right, so we're just going to abbreviate that to AT. We're going to say this is the Silica production. This is going to be the rear. Actually, hold on. Silica production. This is going to be one of three. Part one of three. Rear. And we'll put some Alumtown. Silica, one of three, rear. Because sometimes I do forget my own abbreviating. Let's choose the image for an assembler. Ass. Let's see. We're going to use a color code here. This is a color I use for anything aluminum related. Pardon me. I'm going to use a light gray that I made. And that will be just fine. So here's our Alumtown Silica part one of three rear, because everything's going to basically, this is going to be the back and it's going to go forwards that way, right? Okay, so now next section, because we want these to snap together and be adjacent and seamless, there won't be any, border on this edge, and of course it's a great time for an autosave. All right, and we will start by elevating our 8 meters. Ink drop our coated foundations. We're going to send an outer edge border, this side border, all the way down until we figure out just how much we're really going to need. Here's our inner border for the glass. Let's get the rest of this fleshed out. Now, seeing as we're not using the borders on here, how many machines can I fit? So, I got 8. But what happens here now is, again, because I need to build segments that snap together adjacently and they're seamless, this guy's got a little overhang here. So we're not actually going to keep him here because our next even break is this line here. Let me see. So if I just pull that, just so we can see the boxes. The collision is not the important part here, but you see the how the box for this assembler here falls right on that line. So this is going to be where I want to draw the end. So he's got to go. He's got to go. And let me trim off this unneeded material here. Alright, so those will fit nicely. Now let's get our second shelf. Ah, reinforced iron plates. Okay, so there's our second set of 32, total of 64. And now what we will do for this end, in this third constructor, now you have to be careful when doing this. So I'm going to reuse the first blueprint I made of the rear end of this pod. And this is going to be the forward end of the pod. The half of the pod. We're going to take the same set and build it twice. When using blueprints to build blueprints, things can get weird. You have to be careful when doing this. What can wind up happening is the game doesn't necessarily... If you wind up placing multiple blueprints before you save and load it, it tends to forget what part is part of the blueprint and what's a separate blueprint, and you can come up with some really, really bad effects. Short version around it is... there really is no short version. Basically what I'm going to do... Alright, I'm going to place this one blueprint. This is the one we made a few ago. And let me get this lined up so it's against the edge and in line with the others. Boom. And now, so what I will do is I will save this. So try to stick to a consistent naming convention. Sorts things so much easier. So I want aluminum towel, silica, segment number and placement. So we're going to go aluminum town, silica. This is going to be 2 of 3. This is going to be center or middle, either one. Alright. No. Oh, I thought it was going to lock. I had, during my previous recording that failed, the game did crash out on me in the middle of it and threw out a bunch of changes on me, which really kind of sucked. So I was kind of... yeah. Let's drop a quick save. Just for the safety's sake here. Because I hate reproducing things. Alright, no. And let's save this guy. Actually, what I should be doing... In fact, I think I'm going to correct this really quickly. I shouldn't be using the image of the machines. I need to be using the images of the product. Hold on. Let me fix these others quickly. Alright, and also, let me clear out my support walls. They have served their purpose. And we're going to go. Okay, so we have 3 blocks of 32 assemblers, and that for a total of 96. So now, when built twice, will give us 192 total assemblers for silica production. Let's now assign our recipes and clock speeds. And what did I need again? Okay, the clock speed needs to be 92.857143. And you're probably thinking, how? How do you even do that? The game only gives you 4 decimal places on the clock speed, right? Almost. Okay, let me try and remember this. 92.8571. Yeah, we'll just leave it as 0.714. We might have to adjust some. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second here. Hold on. Okay, so we're going to use cheap silica. 92.85714. And I know you're saying, clock, zonk. The game only gives you 4 decimal places for clock speed. Why are you using 5? And that's because it only displays 4. It will take 5, though. It'll adjust it. It'll round it as though to quote-unquote reduce it to 4. But the 5 will still be in place and in effect, even though you can't see them. I have tested this. I have confirmed this. I absolutely found situations where my production numbers didn't quite snap together the way that they should have, and I was able to adjust things down to that, what is that, the 100,000th place. So enter on that, disappears, but it's still in effect. Okay, so now let's copy this guy, and let me now go paste this a bunch of times. I am aware the area actions does have an option to do mass reproduction of recipes, and that's fine. I've never actually tried it and tested with it, but I really only use the area actions mod for the mass dismantle and the flying. I don't know that its recipe permutations or propagation would necessarily do what I wanted. I don't know. One day I'll find out. This process is absolutely one of those steps where you can accidentally leave an error in your blueprint if you don't get your recipes and clock speeds assigned out across all your machines consistently, and don't notice until after you start building. That can become one of the errors you have to fix. There are a number of those errors in my existing blueprints. No matter how hard I try, I always seem to miss somebody. Okay, so there's our recipes assigned with the clock speeds. All right, so input belting. Let's look at the spreadsheet again. All right, so we settled. We're going to use a total of 192 machines. We're going to use 8 belts for limestone, 4 belts for quartz. Of course, we're building half of this pod, so that's going to be 4 and 2. Doesn't need to go in here right now, but basically at the adjusted rate of 501 and change quartz per belt and 417. Each one of those will support 48 raw quartz. Excuse me, 48 machines for the raw quartz per raw quartz belt, and 24 machines per limestone. Limestone. Oh my goodness. Sorry. It's one of those days. The linkage between the brain and the mouth is slipping gears. So, yes. Okay. I think you see where I'm going with this. Let's get back to the map, or the game. So, what I'm going to do, again, because this is half of the total pod. The total pod needs 8 belts for the limestone and 4 for the quartz. So this is half, so we're going to have 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have 1 belt pops up here, and it's going to go down this way, and it's going to use smart splitters, and it's going to start splitting off limestone to everything. It's going to go all the way down the row, and it's going to feed limestone to the assemblers on the right. A second pop-up for limestone will come up to this level. Again, go all the way down, and doing the same thing, feeding to the assemblers on the right. A third limestone will pop up here. Down this row, feed the ones to the left, and then the fourth will come up here to feed the ones to the right on that level, or left rather. For the quartz, we will have 2 belts. One will come up from here, and again, it's going to go all the way down the row, but we're going to use a splart splitters. Yes, that was intentional. Smart splitters to go. It's going to feed the left and the right as it goes down, and then a second will do the same all the way down for the upper. All right, so now to build these, I'm going to just temporarily fill this in with some foundations just to place things on. Give me a moment to set these. Okay, those are in place. Now, part of effective manifolding, let me turn on the light now that we got some shade here. Effective manifolding, the trick becomes, and it's less about the overall ramp up time. If you're using plain splitters, each one is just doing an even half and half distribution, and so half of the flow will get sent to this assembler, half goes forward, and then half of that gets sent to this assembler, and now it's down to a quarter, and so forth, all the way down. And it can take a long time for a flow to get all the way down for a very long pod like this. So I started using the smart splitters. When I first started having this idea, I was not varying my belt speeds yet. So I would use fast belts all the way, front to back for all the adjoining parts and everything. And what winds up happening there is like, okay, so your feed comes in, and so now in this case, so I'm going to say any is going to go out to the right, and overflow is going to go forward, and none to the left for this row. And so what would happen if I was using fast belts, it would come in, and then all the flow gets to this one, and just everything gets just dedicated to this guy until his buffer fills up, and only then will it start moving forward. And then it does the same thing all over again. It's fine, it works, but you can still run into problems with getting feed all the way down to the end of the line. Mathematically, it'll work, but when you actually go and look, it's going to look pretty starved. And the ones operating at the actual ends will be working on very, very close, if non-existent, margins for error. So it was along those lines I started using, okay, I will connect all my smart splitters with fast belts down the main line, but slow belts to the individual machines. And what this allows is, so the slow belt, the Mark 1 belt of 60 parts per minute is more than enough to supply this machine. What it does do, though, is it prevents this line, this machine, from sucking all the resource out. It allows some, in fact, quite a bit, to continue forward, and now he will start taking his share and sending it forwards. And so, again, at the beginning, it does take time for it to get pushed down, but you do still, I think it saves time on ramp up. I also think, personally, it looks more pleasing. There is another level you can take this. I kind of tried this here and there. I don't bother with it so much anymore. I'll explain that another time. That's not for now. So, any case, all right. I need more spark splitters. I forgot about something. Hold on. I need to, for aesthetic purposes, I'll explain in a bit. This will make more sense. There is a technique. It's a minor thing. Absolutely, strictly for looks. It doesn't have any functional, but basically, I'm going to change the distribution. It doesn't affect it functionally, only aesthetically. Okay, and I will not be placing a splitter on the very end of the lines. They are not necessary. Let me get the remainder of these placed. All right, there's all our smart splitters. Now I need to get their settings. So this guy is already set for any to the right and overflow to the front. We're going to copy that. Let me paste this 1,000 times. Again, this is another one of those opportunities. If you miss one of these, it's a great opportunity for your blueprint to not work as expected when actually placed. Do be careful. Okay, and for this side, we'll set this one so the any goes to the left, the overflow goes to the front, and nothing goes to the right. Copy him, paste him. So those smart splitters are set. Let us now belt them. Again, fast belts down the main line, slow belts to the individual machines. Now, you may also be wondering why I didn't just set up long belts and stick the splitters along the way. There are a couple of good reasons for that. One, that works fine. Placing a splitter on an existing belt. Getting the line up perfectly evenly can become a challenge sometimes, though. That's not even really the main reason why I do it this way. The other is that there does seem to be some incorrect math. There was a video, I forget who exactly put it up, basically illustrating the more joints you have, the more opportunities there seems to be for the math to not work right, and you not get as much items down a line as you expect there should be, based on the, oops, you're not in the right spot. Basically, short version is place your splitters and then belt between the splitters, as opposed to yes, I have great poise. Opposed to placing the belts and putting the splitters on the belts. So I have kind of taken it to doing it this way, such as it is. I will try to remember to post links. If I reference somebody else's video that I got a tip from, I really need to start, because honestly, I did not develop all my techniques alone. I picked tips and tricks up from all over the place. I will try, folks. I no guarantees, but I will try to put the appropriate links in the description so you can see what I'm referencing to. Okay, main belts, now slow belts to the individual machines. And what we'll do for the ends here, because these don't require split, we're just going to make a little slow belt, comes off the end and goes directly in. So the input is still an overflow, which is what we want. Okay, now let's do our pop-ups for these guys. So let's see, let's get some floor holes here. One here. And let's see, so we get belt. I want fast belts, or lift that is, sorry. Connect him. And that's not placed right. Let's move him up a notch. Try that again. In fact, no, I'm going to need that foundation to stay in place for the time being. Try that again. Okay, now he connects. I'm going to rotate it so that it displays the item being carried this way. Let's get this guy over here. Doing the same. He's right up against the seam. Get lift. Connect, rotate it. Good. Now, let's get an additional lift going on each of these. I'm actually going to extend these forward. You know something? I'm going to do all three across here. That's fine. It's going to clip a little bit, but these are only temporaries. That's fine. And so it's got to come to right here. All right. Fast belt to this spot here. And lift down to these floor holes. Everybody going in the right direction? Yes. They're the wrong color. We will fix that later. It's not important right now. Okay, so there we have our 4 lines for the limestone to distribute all the way down the line of this half of the silica pod, right? All right. Now, the quartz. So, again, using smart splitters. Smart. And what I do, because we're feeding from the same direction here, we're going to elevate these. I will be placing initially extras just for the simple, it's just easier to elevate them quickly this way, and then I just erase the extras. And so we'll wind up here. I'll show you really quickly. So we'll delete him out. So now he's elevated. He's in line with the ports needed. We're going to set him to be any to the left and right and overflow to the front. We will build a pole here to make this semi-pleasing. Elevate him a notch. We will use, and just to illustrate, actually let me do this twice just because it's a little prettier to illustrate this way. Up one notch. Ink drop a slow belt. We're going to, from this side to the pole, and then from the pole down to here. Again, to the splitter to the pole, and from the pole to the machine. I'm going to erase my poles because I think they're ugly. And so we will wind up with that. And we're going to wind up with 2 quartz lines doing basically this down the line. Let me get these placed. Oh, and do watch out for your rotation on splitters. I have absolutely pooched myself by not paying attention to that and wondering why my belting isn't working out the way I thought it would. It's funny how it shapes out. What have I done? Hold on. Somebody's not in the right spot. Yes, you're premature. I gotta fix that. Because he belongs here. And this is part of my offsetting of the splitters. And again, I'll show you why I do it this way in a moment. It's just not going to be easy to explain until this part's the complete. Alright, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Better off, right. Bloody well, right. And for the ends of the lines, we will absolutely need a splitter for these, but they only need to be a plain splitter. Booger farts, I did not maintain smart splitters all the way down, or even part of the way down, because I'm a fart smeller. Hold on, you gotta fix this. If you're gonna fix it in a blueprint. I'm just deleting the top ones. I don't need to delete the bottom ones right now, just so that it simplifies placement of the replacements. And I have absolutely done that to myself in production blueprints where I saved it that way and did not realize until I got it out in the field, and that sucks, let me tell you. Alright, now let's get these in place for the upper shelf. Rotate it the correct direction. It's a smart splitter. It's a smart splitter. Double stack it temporarily. Get going, Zonk. Alright, oops, and standard splitter. What to do now? Rotate it correctly. Line it. Double it. Okay. Let me get these extraneous ones deleted. Oops. He's not critical. It doesn't matter. Alright. Let's get down to the end. I believe you're already configured, correct? Any left, any right, overflow front, correct. Copying. Paste these down the lines. Can't paste it because that's a standard splitter. still pasting the correct thing. I am good. That has happened to me before. I start pasting, somehow accidentally copying something when I should be pasting it, and start pasting the incorrect thing down multiples of parts, because I like to make things fun for myself. Alright, fast belts down to central lines. Okay, I need my poles. I'm actually going to use the stackable poles simply because they'll give me the height that I need at the placement that I need, and only takes a single click instead of the double click. And yes, so let me get these. These are temporaries just for the sake of structure until everything is where I want it. Let me make sure I'm knowing where I'm placing it. It's the center of this. I tend to think of tiles in terms of lanes. You kind of got a left lane, a center lane, and a right lane. And of course, that's purely relative, which direction you're facing it. So I'm putting these in, as I view it now, the center of the left lane. The tile. Let's get these out. Thank God they put in these guidelines. I swear, this game would be so much more difficult to make neat if without those. Utterly invaluable. I mean, all right, and slow belts. Wait, you're not right. That's more like it. This also does become one of those tasks where you're doing something literally hundreds of times over and over again, and your brain, or at least in my case, my brain at least, starts kind of turning to mush, and and I don't click quite the way that I should. Sometimes when the autosave comes up, depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I'll stop, take a pause, stop what I'm doing at the task at the moment, and just let the autosave go. Other times, the autosave's on its way up, especially repetitive things like this. I try and see how many I can get done before it clicks in, right? So, dumb little side game. Alright, that's 1/4. Half. You're not right. Thought just occurred to me. I'm gonna stop this partially through here. It was during a task like this in my previous failed recording that the game crashed and I lost some time. Let me save these blueprints as they are at this moment, because I'd hate to have to redo that all over again. Okay, and drop a game save. Alright, better safe than sorry. Stuck like frame. Oh my god, get out. Alright, where did I leave that off? Here. Alright, continuing. 3/4. Okay. So there's our primary belting for that. Let's get our pop-ups. Now, we're just going to keep these in line with the others for the sake of neatness. He's going to follow slightly different rules, so let's stick a pole. It's going to be in the center. It's going to be back a notch, just like that. That should be the trick. Fast belt comes here. Fast elevator comes down, snaps there, snaps in there. Rotate it to face the product this way. And now this one will do nearly the same. Here, fast belt fast elevator, snaps down there, rotated is good. All right, let me slap some paint on these really quickly. I do try to keep them coated. Again, just visual reminders and so I don't have to think too hard when I'm out and about. Hold on, let's see. I like to do a nice kind of beige for my limestone. I need to make a combination. Hold on, let me make a little color swatch really quickly here. I'm going to edit this swatch. I'm going to take the primary color. I have a color preset for limestone. Where are you? There you are. The limestone grade 2. It's just a kind of a gray with a tinge of orange, something like that. He makes very nice. And a secondary color purple, because I like purple. I'm going to save that. This is using the More Swatches mod. And if I go down here, I have my new swatch. I'm going to edit that, and this is going to be special elevator parts production, and this is going to be limestone 1. In case I decide to make a second. Save that, select that, and let me paint some belts and thingy burbers here. Okay, that helps accelerate some things. Let me just paint the individual little belts now. Alright, I'm just going to go through this one more time for safety here. I'm not sure I got everybody I meant to or not. And just trying to make sure I'm getting this thorough. I've absolutely lost my place on which ones I did or not. Unfortunately, with these Mark 1 belts, the freaking stripe is so tiny, it's hard to even know whether I got it or not sometimes. You can barely see the color. Just hitting it for the sake of making sure I've hit it. Hold on. Plenty of overspray on the foundations. It's okay, we can fix that. The ones that we don't delete. Now for the crystal, I have a kind of shade of purple / magenta. Yeah, it was this one, a slightly darker magenta. Select that color, save the swatch, rename the swatch. Spev, special elevators, parts, or space elevator, sorry, and crystal, and save that, select that. Let me get these belts painted. No. There it goes. Fucker. Hold on. Back to where I manually saved. What did I lose? It's partway through the individual belting. Okay, I'll spare you. Let me get rebuilt to where we were. Did I do lower parts? I did not do the lower parts yet. Frick. No, it was the lower. Okay, all right. Let me get this finished. Hold on. Just a real quick thing. I have been experiencing those kinds of crashes where, I mean, there's obviously lots of different situations which can cause a crash, and of course, use of mods increases your probability of having crashes exponentially. Does not deter me from using them until something is permanently game-breaking. This particular one seems to be when doing some sort of repetitive task while traveling at a clip, and it doesn't even need to be using fly mode per se. I've absolutely experienced this without using fly mode, just using it like a jetpack instead. And if you're doing some sort of repetitive task where you're basically flying in one direction and you're just clicking, I think the other way that I experienced it was creating long foundation pieces, not necessarily using smart, but just going down a line and going clicking, 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 clicking as I'm flying, 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 etc. And I've definitely had those same crashes there. I do think that is part of the actual game, not necessarily a mod. It may be just more likely to experience it with a mod. I don't know. Anyways, all right, let me get finished here again. All right, this is another thing that happens. It's really not the end of the world. When you load the game, and this is true for vanilla as well as modded, if the save that you're loading has the structures loaded into the blueprint designer when you load, it doesn't count it as having loaded the blueprint. So now basically, if I try to load the blueprint, yes, the blueprint, it will blow out the little fixes I just made because I forgot to check. And it's sometimes, at least for myself, it's tricky to remember exactly how I named it. So I've got to rename or recreate my saves again. Hopefully I just named them correctly and overwrite the existing ones. Let me get these saved. Alright folks, so I finished painting and much more diligently made sure I saved both the blueprints and the game. You do have to be careful with that. Your blueprints versus your actual game save are semi-independent of each other. So if you want to make sure that you've got the blueprint available in your game save your blueprints, then save your game, then continue. Alright, so now basically I am just erasing our temporary parts, and I've got to do a little paint correction for some overspray, shall we call it, to be polite, friendly. Okay, let me get this done. These temporary parts do kind of start to get a little tedious to delete. You know, there's actually, my mouse does have the thumb button I could use for the mass selection, and you know, honestly, I've just kind of like never, I fiddled with it a little bit, but never really quite developed a habit out of it. Yeah, it's not a big deal. This is just me making sure I'm only deleting the parts I only want to delete. Okay, 2 more sections. Oh, also for the sake of mentioning, I have absolutely also, while doing this, accidentally deleted portions of the factory that were meant to stay in place, and not discovered it till out in the field. So yeah, that sucks. On that note, let me tell you, one of the worst ways that you can find out that, I swear to God, there was a point where I could have sworn, even though I play single player only mode, I started missing parts, so many of which that, like particularly in my original Nuketown build before the mass dismantle, the mass map dismantle, I kind of started to get the impression that I felt like an admin was sneaking into my game and just griefing me, you know, just for the fuck of it. I mean, I really have no reason to genuinely believe that was the case, but it's like it seemed like the only, it's like, well, if it's not me, what else could it be? And in the end, no, it's me. It's just me. Anyways, continuing. Sucks when you accidentally tag one of your splitters in this, because if you accidentally delete a splitter, you have to not simply replace the splitter, you have to delete the existing belts that were connected to it, because you can't reliably stick a splitter into the gap that gets left behind, and it's just extra steps. C'est la vie. See, I did it. Luckily I spotted it, and it's an easy patch. That's good. All right, continuing. Last floor. All right, let me correct some overspray. I'm not worried about this stuff. This is all temporary, but the finished build, yeah. And I think that is that. The oversprays were mostly on the lower level. Now, real quickly before we wrap this one up here, and this is absolutely not complete, but I just kind of wanted to highlight this. So, the way I did this little arrangement, and this is something that it's more apparent when using something like manufacturers where you have multiple, 3 or 4 different ingredients to get belted and arranged. But what I did, so for these two, for these sides with the limestone, these are towards the outer, towards the front and toward the back, and so it's something that's more visible, say like if on my Bat Blast, the final stage, the final pot of manufacturers producing the actual batteries, where I have these increasingly these stepped layers. They kind of form a cascade of belts, so everything kind of like flows downward, like flowing down a hill. And then what I do is the first time I had tried that, it worked great and was very pleasing to look at from one end, and from the other direction all you see is the backside. So basically what I do now is I just, like at the middle or approximation of the middle, I just switch the direction of the cascade, and so that they go in the opposite direction. So basically from whichever end of the pod you're looking at, you see a nice pleasing cascade of parts, keeping things visible, and you get the idea. All right, folks, believe it or not, there was an intention to try and make this shorter than the others. Oh, I have failed, I know. So if you actually watch the whole thing, thank you. And anyways, so I might even record a secondary part B of this episode, because we haven't even done the output lines. And that's going to have some additional math, because that's going to be a number of 780 belts. And again, load distribution taking in effect here. So anyways, for the moment, though, this is it. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you found this, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you picked up something useful from it. And otherwise, if nothing else, I hope you enjoyed my screwing myself over multiple times. And as always, until next time, stay healthy, take care. I'm floating, they hating, get keeping, they dislike my flying freely, dislike my flying freely, dislike my flying freely.